How's it going, gang? This is Eric from Ace of Spades Modelworks. I'm here in my shop today, and I thought for our first video since starting up my YouTube, I'd give you guys a tour around Ace of Spades Modelworks. It's kind of a blustery day out here in Northern California. Might be taking the roof off of the model shop here, but I think it'll be a good day to take you guys around, show you my benches and some tools and stuff I like to use. Because I know so far some of you guys have asked me what are some things that I use. So I'll take you around, show you around, and tell you what's up. So yeah, here is kind of the overview of my workshop. This is the main bench that I use here. I do most of my work here, and then I kind of have over here kind of a quote-unquote guest bench. If my niece and nephew want to come work on something, my wife is actually a very crafty lady, so she'll come out here and work on some projects in my little guest area from time to time. But yeah, so I got these are lab tables that I got from my mom. They have a nice coating on top that is pretty resilient to most thinners and solvents and paints, and just kind of rubs right off. But they've been with me for 15, 20 years almost now, and they've been tanks. So I just kind of butt them up together. And then on the back side here is some shelving that I got. Is actually IKEA. These are picture frame shelves, these black long strips here. And then they are attached to a piece of marine grade plywood because we actually lease our place here, and we can't modify anything here in the garage. So I just added these little kind of like hutches to the back of the desk. They're just secured onto the legs of the workbench in the back there. So I have some proper shelving for all my paints and other supplies that I use. I am a big fan of great lighting, and up in my ceiling I have these Fight Electric. These are LED strips. I have 6 of them, so I have 3 up here that kind of cover my main workbench area, and then I have another 6 over here, another 3 over here that light up my photography area over here, and I also have a little display cabinet and stuff like that, and some photos. But I do primarily most of my photography work here. This is a folding light box. I'll pull it out a little bit later and show you guys what that's all about. And then also, in addition to the lights up here, I got these kind of 3 task lamps. These are 3 tube, I think they're halogen bulbs. I got these off of Amazon. They're pretty expensive at the time, but they've been pretty good. I've only had to replace the bulbs about once. I probably had them for about 8 years. So this provide, closer lighting. I can move them around if I need to. It gets a little more light on the subject that I'm working on. So yeah, big fan of proper lighting. And it's also nice that here in my house I have this nice window to bring in daylight, but I tend to do most of my work at nighttime, so those windows are kind of void. So I got to have the proper lighting in here to work around properly. I'm a big fan of the Iwata brand of airbrushes. I have 2 of them here. These are the HPCS Pluses. I have 2 that I use. They're kind of my tanks, my workhorses. One I use primarily for just kind of general spraying. Another one I use for clear coats and for silver paints. I also have Procon Boy PS290 here, which I use for all my priming. In one of my drawers, I have a PS771 as well. This is my compressor here. This is the Studio Series from Iwata. It's a PowerJet Pro. I can control 2 airbrushes off of it at the same time. And they also have their own individual pressure controls here. I keep them kind of similar. This one's actually cranked up a little bit more because I was blowing air off the desk. Because the one downside about being in a garage is dust is the absolute enemy of all my builds, and it's a nightmare. So I use one of my airbrushes kind of as a blower to blow things off the table before I start to work. So yeah, those are my airbrushes, and then kind of here's the general kind of view I get when I sit down on my bench. I like to keep things nice and clean. Like I said, dust is my enemy, so every day when I'm done working on things, I tend to put them in kind of dust-proof bins and then wrap up and clean up things for the day. The only thing I kind of tend to leave out are my paintbrushes I use, so I just don't forget what I was using and what I was doing with them. And then, yeah, I keep all of the stuff that I tend to use handy, so it's within arm's distance reach. So I got my Vallejo brush paints that I use. I got my Alclads up here, which I'm a big fan of. All my weathering products. I got some decal solvents up here. I got all my AK and my ammo stuff. And then coming down here, I think most of you know I'm a huge fan of MRP paints. I am slowly but surely stocking my way through those. They are absolutely awesome. I love them. I love their color coats. I love their paints. They are just bulletproof. And then of course, you know, you can't go wrong with your Tamiya stuff as well. You know, they're a good workhorse paint. And the big thing is that I can use them with all of, you know, Mr. Leveling Thinner, Mr. Rapid Thinner, and all that kind of stuff. I did for a long time. I shot Vallejos for a long time, and I just kind of got tired of them. They were just inconsistent. They never shot the same each time. Thinning was always, you know, hit or miss. Sometimes, you know, my ratio would be perfect. The other time, the ratio that I used before didn't work. So I decided I'm just making the switch over to Tamiyas and lacquers. So that's what I primarily use these days. I keep Vallejo around for some brush painting. Every now and then I'll let the kids use it when they're working on a project, or, you know, my wife wants to paint something. I was like, hey, you know, use one of these Vallejo products and use it. But Vallejo's white top brand, I use a ton for all my brush painting. So for cockpits and detail work, I'm going with the Vallejo white tops. Yeah, so that's my paints. I'm a big fan of the Mr. Leveling Thinner and Mr. Rapid Thinner. I always tend to have a good hefty supply of those when I can. So I have those. I use that to thin all my MRPs and my Tamiya paints. I got these handy dandy Stairlight bins that I got off of Amazon, or my wife found on Amazon for me, because I had a set of them and I could never find them. And then when we moved in here, I wanted a matching set to keep all my kind of essential tools in. So I got my Xuron cutters in here. I think, you know, everyone has some type of cutter. I have a ton of Xurons. I have these two. These are Tamiya PE pliers. I got some photo edge Xurons. This is for making hoops. These are flat edge Xurons, and these are their Xuron scissors. So yes, I'm a big fan of the Xuron brand of cutters and nippers and pliers and all that kind of stuff. So I keep those all up in here. My Tamiya bending pliers for PE, always helpful. You can use all the edges and the fronts on these. Nice clean cuts and bends. This is actually an old, you can make hoops and stuff for it. Back when I used to do trains, we used to use these for making couplers. And of course, you gotta love your precision Tamiya craft tools nippers. These are the best thing since I've gotten. I got these as a Christmas present. Kind of a pricey pair of clippers, but they're definitely worth it. I got a bunch of fishing line that I use for aerials, wiring, model cast in, elastic thread. You know, for detail work, I got my, you know, drills and vices with drill bits in here. I got a few different ones. This is kind of my mainstay that I use all the time, and I got some ones that work for bigger bits. Some more pliers and whatnot. I got some sewing needles that I used for applying super glue onto photo etch. I'm also using for, you know, for some rescribing. I'll throw them in a vise. Scissors. For some reason, when I moved, I found like 11 pairs of scissors, and there happened to be a majority of them are in this drawer. So everything from these kind of craft scissors to surgical scissors to these pretty cool Japanese small type scissors that you use for rigging. So yeah, tons of scissors. I think there's more scissors in another box here. We'll probably get to it in a little bit. As we're moving on, tweezers. You gotta have your Tamiya craft tool tweezers. These are some of my favorite tweezers. I use them all the time. My tweezer drawer is actually kind of barren right now because a lot of my tweezers are holding some parts for the Vindicator, and they're being held, you know, for parts that have been painted so far. So that's tweezers, and then we got cutting stuff. So we got X-Acto blades, Tamiya saws, you know, your typical round curve X-Acto blades. We got these pivoting blades that I use for cutting curves and circles. Extra X-Acto blades, extra knives, kind of more of the specialty stuff. The cutting tools I tend to use more often I keep out on the bench because they're, you know, easy at hand. But you know, these are kind of things, you know, just your normal number 11 X-Acto blade that, you know, is always a mainstay that I keep in here so I don't chop my fingers off if they're rolling around on the desk. And here's all the tools I use for rescribing and riveting. So I got riveting wheels. You know, this is just a needle and a vise. I got my Tamiya craft saws, which is my #1 tool I like to use for all my rescribing work. So I got those in a couple different sizes and different colors. Rosie the River tools. Can't recommend these enough. I riveted my PV Ventura in this, and this made life a lot easier. And then there's all sorts of kind of like dental tools that you can use for scribing, and awls, and, you know,
basically just sharp and pointy things that you can drag through and make channels and stuff. And I found through the years that these are kind of the best ones that have worked for me. You know, I'm not saying that these are the end-all be-all, but they do make my life a lot easier. So if you get a chance to find some of these Tamiya craft saws, give them a try for scribing. I think they'll make a big difference. Lastly in here, pens, pencils, Micron. I'm a big fan of these Micron pens. I use it for note-taking. I use it for drawing things on. You can actually do a little bit of weathering on them. You know, just kind of general stuff. It's got some silver pencils, some specialty sanding sticks that I use that I don't want to get messed up in my pile of abrasives. Molotow chrome pen for, you know, landing gear and stuff like that. Always useful to have. And then refills for lead. And there's some other specialty colored pencils in here as well. Here's Tamiya tapes. This is not the only drawer of Tamiya tapes I have. I think I have another one because I stock up on them. I need to go the washi route and get some of that cheapo generic brand washi tape because I know it's the same stuff eventually. But this is kind of my finer masking tape. This is some lining masking tape. Is really thin and flexible. Works around curves really well. And then down here is kind of like, you can't really see. Let me move that camera here. All, you know, rulers, metal rulers, some guides, some stuff I use for photo etch, rescribing templates that are kind of losing their place in that drawer, so I keep them in here. And then just kind of general rulers and stuff that I can scrap around, don't mind messing up too badly. So yeah, those are my little drawers. We'll move on to a different spot here. Over here is where I kind of keep the stuff I use on a daily basis and glues, major solvents I use. So I have my Mr. Leveling Thinner, my Rapid Thinner that I keep over here. IPA for cleaning off brushes. H2O, you never know, you need some water. General airbrush cleaner, which is basically just the cheap hardware store lacquer thinner that will pretty much clean out anything. My mystery jars of different types of thinners. And of course, you know, Tamiya Extra Thin is kind of my go-to glues here. So I have the quick setting stuff and just a couple extra ones of the Extra Thin because I tend to go through that quite a bit. Picked up this new Ammo MIG medium dent slow dry stuff. It's been pretty good. It worked really well on the PV for those gigantic wing joints I had. So I have those, and I have some of the old Model Master liquid cements. You never know when you're going to need them. They actually come in quite handy. Tamiya liquid surface primer. I use those quite a bit for spot checking stuff. Mr. Surfacer 1000 and 1500 and 1200. You know, I like to run those to the airbrush for primer coats for more intricate type detail work. Mr. Masking Saw R, you know, for those complex kind of canopies you get. And then I got all my super glue stuff over here and some micro crystal clear. And then this is kind of the main tool stuff that I use every day. I got one of these kind of utility sliding knives that I keep a new blade in, a pair of scissors, a smaller pair of scissors, and even more a smaller set of scissors that I use all the time. My favorite tweezers. Okay, these are just kind of generic brand tweezers. And then my favorite pencil, because I do a lot of notes when I'm working on stuff. And then I got a lighter. You never know you're gonna need a lighter. And then I got a bunch of metal files, which I use for all my kind of work around airframes and ships and that kind of stuff. All my tools that I use for cleaning out my airbrush, and more pens and other kind of cleaning utensils. Then I got some Tamiya tape that I hear, this, the ready to be used. Excuse me. And then in here I keep all my abrasives. I got all my sanding sticks. So you've heard about me talk about Infinity Model sanding sticks before. These are kind of their line. I have these thicker ones. I have these thin, hard ones that you can use, and I have some more kind of sanding stuff lying around. These are their sanding pads, which I've cut down to a more convenient type of cuts there, so I can use those. And then of course toothpicks. You know, which hobby bench is not have toothpicks. You need to get some if you don't have any. And then kind of general, just kind of pipettes, measuring cups. These are actually lids to some mixable beverage we get here at the house that I keep so I can mix up super glue or paint. It's kind of a quick paint palette. So that's kind of the quick stuff that I use. You know, it's one at my fingertips. I need to grab a knife. I know where the knife is. I know where the scissors are. There's right there. And then, like I said, I keep paintbrushes that I'm using during a project or a certain phase. Like right now, I have my kind of weathering paintbrushes. These are small. I was doing some pin line panel washes on on the Vindicator, so I want to keep things nice and precise, not just sludging around. So I have some smaller brushes that I use for when I do precise work. This is my kind of bin of paintbrushes. I'm very particular about how I use my paintbrushes. I have paintbrushes for specific things I use, like this section over here are my, these flat brushes are all decal brushes, and then I have my chipping brushes are here, and kind of these are just big brushes that I use to slop stuff on, and then more precision, and then weathering brushes for when I work with my oils. And then these are more of my detail painting brushes. And then I have some Deerfoot stipplers, which are also for weathering, and then some of these fan blades. So I'm pretty particular about what I use them for. I'm also very guarded of my paintbrushes. If my wife comes in here and asks if to use a paintbrush, I usually go dig into this, plastic bag of kind of the crappy brushes and let her use those, because I am particular about my paintbrushes. I want to make sure that my paintbrushes are good to use for what I intend the purposes for. So I treat them really well. I make sure that I clean them, I condition them afterwards, and make sure that their life lasts very long. And I do tend to buy some dumpy brushes from time to time if I know I'm going to do some kind of heavy work on stuff, and want to abuse them a little bit. I'll buy some pretty cheap ones. But those are my paintbrushes, and then we will move on to the kind of the guest bench here in a second. Yeah, over here, the guest bench, it's an area for if I have buddies that want to come build. I have a couple buddies who build models with me from time to time. My niece and nephew have gotten into model building. My wife will do crafts here. So the stuff that's over here is kind of stuff I don't use all that often. So it's kind of more of a storage area, if anything. But I will come over here and grab some things. So I got some, of the the original MIG production pigments, which are great. I don't use them all that much, but they do come in handy. I got some general AK pigments as well, some MIG Productions washes, Flory models. This is when I first got back into model building. This is what I did for all my washes, and I still use them from time to time for certain applications. So I have a couple pots around, extra IPA. I like to use the old Model Master Metalizer lacquers for chipping if I do it by a brush. No offense against AK, but I think these are garbage. They should just be in my garbage can at this point. Big old jar of mineral spirits. Model Master acrylic flat clear are pretty solid, but since I found MRP's flat clear, these might go to the wayside here. I got some photo etch burnishing stuff. Some extra Tamiya lacquer thinner if I actually just want to, use regular old lacquer thinner, and Tamiya X20A instead of, using something else. And then I got some, Alclad clear coats that I use from time to time, and then some stuff for taking care of brushes and some slow drying medium when I'm doing my hand painting and detail painting with Vallejo, so they don't dry out so fast if I'm not working with a wet palette. And then, kind of over here, I got the last little, this is stuff for soldering when I do some soldering with photo etch, your general children's type glue if the kids need it, or sometimes I use it for stuff. Some inks that I use for washes in certain cases, and then of course Tamiya Weathering Master. Those are pretty cool sets. And then of course some plastic shine and stuff like that. Like I said, over here it's a guest area. If I need stuff, I come grab it. If not, I just kind of tell people don't touch it, or it might actually sometime soon end up in the garbage because I don't use it as much. Oh, not to forget, probably one of my favorite weathering tools over here is the Mr. Weathering Color multicolors. I use these a lot for kind of one of my first stages of before I do oil work. I use this stuff to kind of lay out some filth and grime around airflames. I probably won't use this on the Vindicator because it's a relatively clean build, but these are very useful. They should be on that side of the bench, but I just don't have a spot for them since the containers are kind of an awkward size, but eventually they'll find their way over there. But I will get up and travel over there to grab a few colors when I'm getting towards that phase in the model build. Back over at the main bench again. Down here I got some more storage. This little cheapo kind of plastic bin. General kind of supplies. I got some popsicle sticks, some Q-tips, these easy applicators, some clamps, blue tack, white tack, more Tamiya tape, tiny little pipettes, stuff that I use from time to time. Epoxy putty tape, which is awesome. So I keep that in there. Going down, the ever so important Albite tongue 502 oils. I probably just butcher that, but whatever. I love these. It's great that I found a place that actually sells them local, so I don't have to order them online all the time. And they have actual individuals instead of the pack. So, but these are kind of the big oils that I use all the time. All the ones that are out are the ones I use pretty much all the time when I'm doing some detail stuff or some weathering or some oil mapping. So yeah, keep those in the second drawer. Going down is kind of an extra supply of clears. I use a lot of Tamiya X22 as general clear coat stuff, so I have a ton of it kind of laying around. I just got some of this CA that is UV curing glue, which has been pretty fun to play with. I haven't really used it too much, but on my next build, it'll be used a lot because there's a lot of photo etch and a lot of resin to be used. So you'll have to wait for me to use that stuff a little bit more. Of course, your ever important Mr. Hobby opener for all your Tamiya paints and Mr. Hobby stuff, and then the little grip thing. Ball bearings to keep all my paints shaken, because I'm not a stirrer, I'm a shaker. Down here, more abrasives. This is more Affinity brand sanding sponges, some mixing cups. I got a digital caliper for measuring stuff because I suck at measuring stuff on a tape measure or a ruler. I'm not very good at it. Oh, just need to move that for a second. I open this drawer. Down here is all my scratch building stuff. So I got styrene sheet, styrene rods, and I got some metal rods and stuff that I use for gun barrels. Some clear stuff that I use for HUDs and heads-up displays and gun sights and all that good stuff. That's all there. And then at the bottom, just kind of general storage for my airbrush boxes. Some Scotch tape, which always comes in handy. And I got some 5-minute quick curing epoxy for when I do landing gear and stuff like that. I keep that down there because it doesn't get used all that much. Most of the time I can just get by with super glue. Yeah, ever so handy things of lacquer thinner and mineral spirits. I'm always at the ready. I always buy a couple when I go to the hardwood store or hardware store. I always screw that word up for some reason. It's from working with hardwoods in the saw industry for so long. I say hardwood all the time. All these kits down here are basically kits that I had before I moved, and they're kind of, not finished, or they've been parted out or things like that. So I think you guys have heard me multiple times. I don't keep a stash per se. It's just kind of old stuff floating around. So like this Sea King I've been working on for a while. I need a new canopy for it. It broke. This F8J Crusader, someone decided that they needed the front windscreen, so I'm like, oh, I have 2 of them at the time, so I gave them the windscreen, so now I don't have a windscreen. But the bad thing is with this Hasegawa, getting replacement parts is kind of impossible. So they are sitting there just waiting for replacement parts, or maybe I'll just buy a new kit one of these days. So yeah, most of these kits here are just kind of leftovers of stuff. I probably should just go through them and toss them. There is actually one kit here, which is right down here. You might be able to see it. It's a 1/48 scale Catalina, which I would love to build one day, but I have no place to put it. I love the Catalina. My dad's a big fan of the Catalina too. It'd be a great. Maybe I should just build it and give it to him, and then he can deal with storing it. He would hate me for that. And here I got decals, other kind of stuff. I got a whole stack of decals that I love. That one of these days we'll end up on a plane. A couple extra airbrush parts are in here as well. Some more photo etch and tacky cloths and aftermarket stuff I got. These are the wheels I was waiting for the P51B that took like 8 years to get here. So they never went on the actual P51B, but they'll be there because I'll probably build another P51B one of these days because I love that plane. Oh, you're not supposed to see that. That's secret for my next project. But yeah, so more stuff I just want to keep flat with some space, some soldering irons and stuff like that. Some cloth and good old-fashioned pencils and counterweights and stuff for soldering and all sorts of goodness in there. Moving on up, we got a couple more drawers here. There's my new AK pencils. This is where I keep all the stuff that I'm using for a current project. So I got all my decals I was using for the Vindicator, photo etch, the guns and all that kind of stuff. Oh, there's some parts for the PV in there as well, directions and stuff like that. So I know where it's at. So I always keep the stuff I'm using at hand so I don't lose it or it gets blown away, because when we open our garage door it's like a wind tunnel in here. Go on Amazon and buy yourself a huge pack of pipettes. I think it was $5 for 300. So do that, and while you're at it, get yourself some Q-tips and some rubber gloves. I'm a rubber glove guy. I like to keep my models clear of fingerprints, oils, and all that kind of stuff. One less step for me to have to clean up. I just gotta keep kind of all my disposable stuff that I need at hand. Up here is where I keep builds as they're going on. So, like I said, being in a garage, dust sucks. And I keep everything in my dust-proof bins. So these are all kind of the small component parts for the Vindicator. These were the smaller parts that are for the Vindicator. And there she is sitting in her dust-proof bin right now. So I keep everything in those bins, keep them free from dust. After I'm done working for the day, everything goes from the bench into the box up here, and it's stored, keep it clear from the dust. And I got my mules. I think some of you guys saw me working on my silver tests. And then I started doing some orange tests or orange-yellow tests with some panel liners, and that's how I figured out what colors I was going to use last night when I did my oil washes, or not oil washes, my ammo washes on the Vindicator. So yeah, it's kind of the general look here. So if we kind of zoom back, we took you all the way from the guest bench, working my way over to my mainstay, and then kind of my storage unit over here. And then last up, we'll kind of come over here to where I end up on a project. This is my photo section. This is kind of where I take my in-progress photos. I want some nice ones with a white background. I got this kind of another piece of maritime grade plywood that I installed onto the previous part. It's not too intrusive to the original design of the house, but it's there. And of course, I don't get to put these in the house, but I love having these black and white photos of just heroes, in my opinion. We got Chuck Yeager here. We got Ted Williams, back when he was flying in Korea. We got all these great, pilots. We got, J.H. Howard. He was an ace in, the Pacific and in European theater. We got Philip Bong, Richard Bong. I like to honor these guys. This is what I build most of my models is based on, a picture of a pilot. I want to replicate that guy's plane because it's more about the guy who flew it than it is about the machine. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. By the way, we've got a couple more pictures out there. We got the wonderful John Glenn. If you can guys see, it's kind of dark. Okay, another astronaut there, Schwager. Okay, but back over here to the photo area. Let me open this thing up and we'll get back. So yeah, I have this fold-out photo light box that I got from Amazon. It's good for product photography. We'll work on some smaller models. The PV one Ventura barely fit in here, so I might have to think of a different plan for that, but I have enough of this table space now that I could probably get some white paper and roll it out, and I'll have a nice shooting surface. The lighting in here is pretty good. I do set up some lights along the corner. You see I have a couple mounts for extra couple lights. I have a couple ring mounts that I use, or ring lights that I use as well. So that's where all my kind of last product final reveal photography happens, is right here at this part of the bench. And then I have, last but not least, my display cabinet, which is totally empty since I upgraded my other Detolf cabinet in the house. So there's only three models in here, and this is the old Pro Modeler SB2C Helldiver, and then I got a Hasegawa Henschel, the Panzerknacker, and then I got the Night Fighter ME262 with the radar around the front with the VO56 on it. So we'll have to make sure we're working to fill up another one of these, since the one in the house is completely filled, and I actually have more shelves for this one. So hopefully you guys will see me working my way through to fill this thing up with some hopefully fun and quality projects that I'm looking forward to bringing to you guys. I forgot to mention, probably the most important tool in my workshop is my speaker. Yeah, I pretty much always have some type of music going on while I'm in here, and I'm very eclectic. I'll be listening to some 1940s swing, or I'll be listening to some Sabaton, or last night I was listening to Master P, and my wife walked in like, "What are you listening to?" So yeah, I dabble in a lot of different music, but this bad boy was a gift from a friend, and it goes outside for barbecues, but it pretty much always lives in here for my model building. And then when the niece and nephew come over, I annoy them with my music even more, but it's more kid-friendly, of course. And then, of course, a shop fan to blow out all the nasty fumes. That's the one downside about me shooting Mr. Paint. They don't smell the greatest, and they're not the best for you, so I'll make sure I have this going on. I don't have a ventilator or a hood or anything like that, but I have a door over here that I keep open. I prop the windows open as best I could, and I run the fan. So hopefully you don't hear me, croaking from paint fume exposure. But yeah, that's kind of the rest of the workshop right there. And then of course you got to have a nice comfy chair for you to sit in, which luckily I have a lifetime warranty on this, so make sure that thing lasts for a long time. So yeah, that was the kind of the nickel tour of the Ace of Spades Modelwork workshop. I hope you saw some cool things. If you have any questions, or you want to know more about something that I use, or if you want me to show something off a little more, leave it in the comments and I'll take a look at it, and maybe we can figure out another time. We'll come back and have a at the bench, we'll bring out some tools, show you guys around some of the more specific things I use. So take a look at my Instagram. If there's things that you saw on my Instagram that I do or that I use, take a look, mention in the comments on Instagram or here. And yeah, we'll definitely follow up and we'll answer all your questions or show you around a little bit more. Thanks for watching my kind of first official video on the YouTubes. I'm looking forward to several more, showing you some more tips and tricks, and maybe get some builds going on here soon. Since I'm in the middle of the Vindicator, I might do a video coming up soon on how to use watercolor pencils to do some weathering, because I plan on using the watercolor pencils a little bit. So once again, this is Eric from Ace of Spades Modelwork, signing off. Take it easy, gang.